Chapter 32, page number 243. We continued on past Amasha and past Marsovan. As the road descended to Samson, the air began to smell of the sea, and the stands of olive trees appeared on the hills. Through the mist beyond the hills, I saw a patch of the Black Sea, my pathway to freedom and a new life. It disappeared when the road turned and dropped, and then appeared again, clearer and wider and more thrilling than before. Excitement to match my own spread from wagon to wagon, and now the German soldiers were calling to one another and pointing in the direction of the sea. A horn blew in the distance, and then another. The sea disappeared behind the hills, and when it reappeared, I saw 3 battleships in the harbor. The ships' horns blew again and again, and now I had to whip my horses to keep with the wagons ahead. The soldier beside me said something that I did not understand, grabbed the reins, and shook them harder. "March now," he said. "March now." When we were a mile or two from the harbor, the wagon stopped, and without a word, the soldier beside me jumped down from the wagon and walked quickly in the direction of the battleships. Incredibly, the other Germans followed, leaving their boxes behind on the wagons. When the battleships blew their horns again, the soldiers began to run. "What are they doing?" I said, but no one answered. When the soldiers went out of sight, the other drivers, as if by prior arrangement, shook their reins and drove away, each in a different direction. It was probably a comical moment, though, being alone in the center of a dirt road on the outskirts of a strange city, I saw nothing funny about it. Also, it was getting dark. I listened, hoping to hear the sound of a city, but I heard nothing. Thinking that I ought to do something, I shook the reins and drove down one of the roads. After about a half a mile, I stopped. It occurred to me that without an entourage of 4 wagons in the presence of German soldiers, I was only an Armenian, as vulnerable in Samson as I had been in Bitlis and Andreas in Kars. I had no evidence that I was really a driver for the Turkish army, and I did not want to be accused of stealing a military uniform in a wagon. So I stepped down, unharnessed the horses, and started to walk. So basically, all these Germans drove these horses and wagons to the harbor, but then they just abandoned them. They were just looking for a way to get there, and then they just, dropped out on their job. Many miles later, the narrow dirt road widened, and in the distance I saw the pale light of a street lamp in the deserted street it illuminated. On either side of the street were blocks of shadows that in the morning would become the ironsmith's shop, the butcher's shop, and the general store. I saw several groups of men standing in a dirt field beside their wagons. I saw the open boxes that contained their produce. They were farmers waiting for the morning, for market day. I stood a safe distance from them and listened. The men were speaking a language I had never heard. There was a boy sitting alone on a crate beside one of the wagons. I quickly crossed the 25 yards of darkness that separated us, and a voice intentionally deeper and more threatening than my own said in Turkish, the safest language one stranger could speak to another, "What language are these men speaking?" The boy looked up startled. "Greek," he said. "You're Greek?" I could not have been more relieved if he had been Armenian. The Greeks, aside from being fellow Christians, were fellow victims of the Turks. "Yes," the boy said, "I am Armenian." The boy nodded warily, as though I had told him I was a ghost. I did not realize how rare Armenians in Turkey had become. Also, I had forgotten I was wearing the uniform of a Turkish army. "Wait," he said, "wait here." He ran to the big-bellied man who was with several others who were tossing coins at a spot in the darkness. At that distance, all I could see was his huge mustache. It was as bushy as a sultan's, nearly covering the bottom third of his face. As he followed the boy back to me, he swiped a piece of fruit from the open box of one of the farmers, took a huge bite, then tossed a coin 6 or 7 feet into the box. "My name is Spiros Koloris," he said, addressing me in Turkish. He smiled broadly, but his eyes were shrewd, watchful. "You're Armenian?" "Yes," I said. "From where?" "Bitlis." The man nodded. He was squat and barrel-chested, with thick forearms and a heavy, bearded, stubble face. Despite his suspicions, there was a sense of vitality and well-being about him that seemed to fill the night. "Why are you wearing a Turkish uniform?" he asked. "There are many Armenians in the Turkish army," I said. "This belonged to my cousin." "Your cousin was a soldier?" "Yes," I said. "What was his name?" "If I'm speaking to a friend and not a gendarme, what business is it of yours?" "It is not my business at all, if you're Armenian. But I've helped a few Armenians here and there, so I must be a little careful." "And how did you know that the others were really Armenian?" The man did not answer at first, and then he smiled as though the question of my veracity had just been settled. "From Bitlis," he said. "You're lucky to be alive. What is an Armenian from Bitlis doing in Samson?" "I want to go to Constantinople," I said. "You have money?" "I have a few lira." "A few lira? You'll need more than a few lira. How many lira?" I started to take off my shoe to show him one of my 10 lira notes. I had taken the precaution of putting one in each shoe. But he held up his hand. Do you show every stranger where you keep your money? He said. You're not a stranger, I said foolishly. You've known me for 5 minutes, and I'm not a stranger? I think you make friends too quickly. Everyone you meet is a stranger until he proves that he is your friend. Do you have more than 7 lire? Yes, I said. Then I can help you. What is your name? Vaughn Kandarian. Vaughn? All right, Vaughn. Tomorrow you will meet a man who will ask you the same questions I'm asking you now, and this man will not care whether or not you know how to hold on to your money. If you tell him how much you have, that is how much he will want. Are you hungry? Before I could answer, he turned to his son. Menelaus, get the boy some bread. To me. If you have money in your other shoe, take it out and put it somewhere else. Now? Not now, when you're sure you're not being watched. You like melon? Yes, I said. Get one of the melons, he called to the son. And the knife. Bring the knife. That night, I lay in the back of Spyrus Colores's wagon. Beside me, Menelaus slept. Spyrus Colores was asleep on the driver's board under a blanket, and I listened to him snore for several minutes. Then I took off one of my shoes, removed a 10-lire note, rolled it tightly, and put it in my sock. Satisfied, I closed my eyes. Good boy, the Greek said in a startling, clear voice. Now get some sleep. When I awoke the next morning, Menelaus and his father were gone, and the dirt field was crowded with marketers, and I sat up in the distance, saw Spyrus Colores talking to a slight man of indeterminate age. He stood very close to Mr. Colores, his arms folded, his head cocked, listening. He nodded once, then looked at the wagon where I was sitting. The two men started toward me, and I stepped down from the wagon and watched them approach. I am a friend of Mr. Colores, the gray man said to me. He had a gray, middle-aged face, thinning gray hair, and the flat, impersonal eyes of a ticket-taker at a carnival. With a glance, he reduced my entire history and physical relevance to a hand holding a ticket. You want to go to Constantinople? Yes. Do you have any relatives there? Yes, I lied. I have many relatives. It will cost you money, the man said. How much? Can you pay 15 lire? No, I said. I don't have that much money. You have 10 lire? If I give you 10 lire, I won't have anything left. Show me your money. I looked at Spyrus Colores, who nodded once, almost imperceptibly. I took off my shoe and withdrew the 10-lire note. That's all you have? Yes. Give me 8 lire when we board the ship, and 2 will be enough for you. He said something in Greek to Mr. Colores, who laughed. What did he say? I asked. He says that if you were not my friend, he would ask you to take off your other shoe.